Black and heavy is the skyscapes most of the days. Even then, bright and clear is the mindscapes all the days. Welcome once again to News Analysis. News Analysis, a weekly magazine on current affairs. To begin with the main points in a nutshell. Spreading Pakistan floods affect 4 million people, says UN. Russia bans grain exports after drought shrivels crop. Court rejects same-sex marriage ban in California. Saddam Hussein deputy Tariq Aziz calls for US forces to stay in Iraq. News Analysis and Kerala Vision condoles the death of Cam Matthew. Cameron and Zardari holding talks at Chequers. And now the news in detail. Spreading Pakistan floods affect 4 million people, says UN. People say they are not getting help from the army or the government. The worst flooding in Pakistan's history has now affected more than 4 million people and left at least 1,600 dead, says the UN. While floods in the northwest began to recede, the vast body of water has been moving down the country into new parts of Punjab and menacing Sindh province. All wells have been contaminated and waterborne diseases are spreading, officials say. The region is midway through monsoon season and more rain is forecast. The number of affected districts in Punjab has reached 7, while 350,000 people have been moved from neighboring Sindh province, most of which is on high alert, the United Nations said. Manuel Bessler, who leads the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Pakistan, told a news conference in Geneva, "What we are facing now is a major catastrophe." He added, "We are only in the middle of the monsoon season. There is more rain expected. We are afraid it will get worse. With crops, homes, roads and bridges washed away, human exodus continued on Thursday as yet more torrential rain fell. Fleeing villagers have waded barefoot through water up to their necks and chests, carrying belongings on their heads. Russia bans grain exports after drought shrivels crop. Russia announced Thursday it would ban grain exports through the end of the year, a response to a scorching drought that has destroyed millions of acres of Russian wheat and hobbled the country's agricultural revival. The ban on grain exports by Russia, one of the world's largest wheat producers, helped propel wheat prices in the United States towards their highest levels in nearly 2 years and raised the prospect that consumers could pay more for products like flour and bread as Russia tries to conserve its supplies of wheat, barley and other grains for its own users. In announcing the ban, which is in force from August 15th to December 31st, Prime Minister Vladimir V. Putin said that Russia had sufficient stockpiles of grain, but the blocking of exports was an appropriate response to the worst drought in decades. We need to prevent a rise in domestic food prices. We need to preserve the number of cattle and build up reserves for the next year, he said during a televised cabinet meeting, according to the Associated Press. As the saying goes, reserves don't make your pocket heavy. Russia's agricultural output, once the victim of chronic shortages during the Soviet era because of the unwieldy bureaucracy and failed farm policies, had grown as the country privatized old collective farms and gained force as a food exporter. But this summer's persistent drought, accompanied by weeks of record heat, has depleted fish stocks in its rivers and filled the air around Moscow with haze and smoke from peat bog fires and left the rich soils of country's black earth growing region parched. Russia's grain union reduced its forecast for this year's harvest by 15% compared with last year's crop, and more than a dozen of regions of the country have declared states of emergency. Mr. Putin said Thursday that the grain reserves would be distributed to the people in the hardest hit areas. As of today, Russia has no grain market, Kirill Podolsky, chief executive officer of the Russian grain trader Vallars Group, told Bloomberg News. This will be a catastrophe for farmers and exporters alike. Can this have a repercussion on Indian granary? Court rejects same-sex marriage ban on California. Saying that it discriminates against gay men and women, a federal judge in San Francisco struck down California's voter-approved ban on same-sex marriage on Wednesday, handing supporters of such unions at least a temporary victory in a legal battle that seems all but certain to be settled by the Supreme Court. Omar Abdullah visits hospital, meets injured in recent violence. In an effort to check the medical facilities provided by those injured in the recent violence in Jammu and Kashmir, Chief Minister Omar Abdullah visited a leading hospital on Thursday, unfazed of a hostile crowd that surrounded him. Mr. Abdullah drove from his office to the super specialty Sher-e-Kashmir Institute of Medical Sciences, SKIMS, where he talked to the patients and their attendants. U.S. charges 14 over links to Somalia's Al-Shabaab. U.S. officials have charged 14 people with providing money, personnel and services to the Somali militant group Al-Shabaab. The charges stem from separate indictments in the U.S. states of Minnesota, Alabama and California. Concerns about Al-Shabaab have grown after the group carried a bomb attack in Uganda. On Wednesday, a man was charged with attempting to support Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab. Prosecutors said Shakir Masri of Chicago had sought to travel to Somalia to join Al-Shabaab, which the US and UK consider a terrorist group. The indictments unsealed on Thursday make reference to 4 specific individuals as well as a group of 10 men charged with providing resources to Al-Shabaab, which has close ties to Al-Qaeda. In 2 separate indictments, prosecutors charged Shafiq Hamami, a former resident of the U.S. state of Alabama, and Jahad Sharwan Mustafa, formerly of California, with providing material support to Al-Shabaab. In the District of Minnesota, prosecutors unsealed an indictment charging Amina Farah Ali and Hawa Muhammad Hassan with providing funds to the Somalia-based militant group. Both defendants, who are naturalized citizens, were arrested on Thursday. The 2 are accused of having raised money in Somali communities in the US and Canada, telling people the funds would help the poor and needy in Somalia. Saddam Hussein deputy Tariq Aziz calls for US forces to stay in Iraq. Saddam Hussein's most loyal deputy, Tariq Aziz, has accused Barack Obama of leaving Iraq to the wolves by pressing ahead with withdrawal combat troops in the face of festering instability and a surge in violence. In his first interview since he was captured shortly after the fall of Baghdad more than 7 years ago, Iraq's former deputy prime minister and longtime face to the world said the United States would cause the death of Iraq if it continued to withdraw its combat forces. "We are all victims of America and Britain," he told The Guardian from his prison cell in Baghdad. "They killed our country in many ways. When you make a mistake, you need to correct a mistake, not leave Iraq to its death." Speaking only days after Obama confirmed that the US would be ending its combat mission in Iraq this month with the withdrawal of thousands of troops, Aziz said the country was in worse state than before the war.